What screams, "I'm a bad parent"? Never saying sorry to the kid when the parents make a mistake. I do this whenever I make a mistake, or if I've thought about the action I made and have decided I handled the situation wrong. It usually follows with a conversation with her to be able to understand why I, as the parent, was wrong. My daughter is 5, and I want her to understand that it's okay to be wrong and that parents aren't always right. I always want her to know that she can talk to me always. And if I upset her, I damn sure want to know about it. You are the parent, but that open line of communication and understanding is going to help your relationship greatly as they get older. If something happens when she gets older that's serious, she can either hide it, which a lot of kids do, or come to me knowing I'm going to listen, be there, and do everything possible to help make it right. I do that too. I just want her to have empathy and to be a decent human being, and you can't do that when you gaslight your kids. Using children as pawns in divorces or separations. My niece's father just called his 7-year-old daughter to tell her to make her mother apologize for blocking his number last night. He is upset she won't listen to him scream at her. Kids are opening presents and he's screaming vulgarities at his daughter. Dad of the year right there. So yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Treating your kid as your therapist. I don't know if this really screams it, but I absolutely hate when adults tell other adults their children's shameful secrets for no reason. Even strangers. It tells me those children probably don't feel like they can trust their parents. This was my mom. She knows absolutely nothing about my personal life now as an adult. I don't tell her anything I wouldn't feel comfortable telling a stranger. My mom weaponized anything I told her. After I stopped giving her ammo, she complained that I never told her anything. Weird. Blaming your own mistakes and regrets on your kids. Yeah, it's not my fault I was born. It's yours. And the irony of someone who didn't raise the kid properly saying that they were a mistake is even worse. You're the reason I'm stuck with your father. Sure, Mom. Sure. My favorite response to that is, I didn't pick him, you did. Making your child think they aren't good enough. My mom once told me, you're a screw-up and you'll always be a screw-up. I still think about that every time life isn't going my way or I'm feeling bad. Recently, I was rereading some journals from high school, and there were all these entries about things my mom said to me that I don't even remember, but have become an intrinsic part of my insecurity. You'll flunk out of college, get married, and have a couple of kids, get a divorce, and struggle for the rest of your life like we are now. You'll never be a scholar. You probably won't even go to college. Good God, did God not give you the sense he gave a horse? She's a very broken, toxic woman, and I cut her out of my life years ago. I moved across the country to live with my father's sister, who took me in as the child she never had. I graduated with my bachelor's, my MFA, and now I'm starting my PhD. I'm a published writer and have presented at conferences and worked closely with and befriended multiple NYT bestselling authors. I've achieved more at 35 than she has her entire life. Don't let your parents tell you you're worthless or that you're incapable of anything you want to accomplish. Chances are that they are bitter, damaged people who are jealous of the success and potential that you have. Parents who can't apologize to a child. It's okay to have human emotions and moments to be triggered or struggling and lash out or to be wrong, but for the love of all things good, apologize and change. My parents are allergic to apologizing when they mess up. On the rare occasions they acknowledge they messed up. Pisses me off to high hell. Mine just pretend it never happened and move on. Ironically, never thinking you're a bad parent. I was assigned to a range of free parenting with love and logic course a bit late in the evening for our school. I thought given the time the class was, lots of parents of some of the challenging kids who work could make it to the class. Within a very short time, the class was full. I attended the class too, and noticed the parents I saw were either teachers or parents of well-behaved kids. I felt so naive to think parents of naughty kids would even bother to show up. This still makes me sad to this day. If it helps at all, there's still a decent chance that some of the parents there were able to learn a thing or two and apply it to become better. Just because they're good parents doesn't mean they had no room to improve and didn't take any advice. Demeaning your children as a means of punishment. Your own children are afraid of you. No child should be afraid of the person that looks after them nearly 24/7. I really don't think it clicks till adolescence, either when you look back and realize that you really were terrified of your father 24/7 as a child. Using your kid as therapy and then getting upset when they have issues regulating their emotions. My mom, 100%. She told me some really heavy stuff about her childhood when I was 6, so I spent a good deal of my early adulthood figuring out how to process my own problems. Zero interest in the kid. Doesn't care what they do or what happens to them as long as they don't inconvenience them. Only caring for the child when they do what you want them to do. Punishing adult children when they don't do everything you say by silent treatment or nasty texts. Days later, acting as if nothing happened, saying, "You never let go of things." My parents did this when I was a teen. No face-to-face conversations, just shameful texts. The next day, they would act as if nothing happened. They've been alcoholics my whole life, and when I hit my teenage years, I got into alcohol and hard drugs. My mom and I fought every night, and the next morning she would act as if nothing had happened. Trying to address it was pointless because she would fly off the handle screaming. And then Dad would send me a crappy text about how I should be ashamed of myself and that I was breaking my mom. There's never been any conflict resolution in this house, just inebriated fighting followed by denial. Yelling at the kid for every trivial thing. My mother used to get up in my face and yell at me for trivial things. She would also spit on me while yelling. Yelling at a kid is traumatic for the kid. Don't do it. There are better ways to communicate than yelling. This is one of my core memories. Swapping the parent gender and the reason I will never ever take care of my father in his old age. Being addicted to drugs. Triangulation. After the divorce, one of our parents immediately weaponized our relationship against the other. I'm 32 and still unweaving all of the details in my brain. It hurts my heart to know so many can relate, but it warms my heart to be reminded that I'm not alone. My mom did this big time with us. "Behave or I'll send you to your father's" was a threat as a kid. Never really knew my dad or why they got divorced. He's dead, so I know I'll never get the actual reasons or facts about it. To clarify, Mom didn't kill him. They divorced, then he died years later. Treating your son as the man of the house because you're single goes right up there with treating your oldest daughter as the stand-in mom because you're single, or treating your oldest daughter as a free nanny and free maid. The infantilization of their children, wanting them to stay helpless babies forever because they don't want them to grow up. I'm a nanny and it seems like a growing trend. It's one thing to engage in some infantile behavior or spoil your children a little. It's another thing to bend to every whim and not make your kids uncomfortable. I think many people place their entire identity and purpose onto their children and need to keep those children helpless and clueless so as not to lose that. All subconsciously, of course. Well, I think it's normal for your identity to become your kids at first. When you're constantly breastfeeding, changing diapers, and holding your baby, that's fine. At some point, you have to let it go though, and some stay-at-home moms refuse to. Not correcting your kids. It's okay, they're kids. Well, you kind of forgot the part where you're supposed to teach them. They don't just grow out of their bad behavior by themselves. Yeah, I learned this lesson after my niece was born. And honestly, it is okay because they are kids, but you can't let them know that, or they'll never learn any better. Saying, "You're too young to be depressed," and ignoring red flags from mental illness. Invalidating your child's feelings, struggles, and mental illness in favor of, "You don't know what struggling really is," or some form of "back in my day," or "you kids are so weak." You have just robbed your child of support, told them their feelings do not matter, and informed them that you are not a safe person to confide in. Their stress isn't relative to your experience, it's relative to their experience. A 4-year-old stubbing their toe might actually be experiencing the worst pain in their entire life. Just because you snapped a femur and have had countless other injuries that have tempered your pain response and ability to manage yourself, it doesn't mean stubbing a toe isn't that bad. Your job isn't to raise good children, your job is to raise good adults by teaching children to understand and accept the world around them, how to understand and accept their own selves, and how to understand and accept others. Saying things like, "You're such a disappointment," and "I wish I had a daughter instead." Thinking that small children are just selfish tiny adults. Your kid isn't asking for stuff because they're selfish. Mostly excluding their occasional manipulative tendencies, they are doing it because they are 5. Don't be a peen to your kid because they ask for support, help, or food. They also know nothing other than themselves. They're learning. It isn't selfishness, it's their worldview which is literally undeveloped. All children are egocentric until they are older and understand where they fit into the world. That's the parent's job to help them in this endeavor. Your kids never visit once they move out or go to college. Your adult children don't talk to you. Yeah, it took me a while to understand that my wanting to go no contact with my parents is a failure on their part, not mine. I sympathize with this. It's easy to see yourself as the one doing something wrong when you want to sever communication, but you need to understand why you feel the urge to do so. Always believing they're right because they're the adult, and therefore not letting the child have any say. Telling your kid that you need them only for their money in the future. Not believing in telling your children no. The world will and should tell them no at times. They must be prepared for that reality, or they will be an absolute menace to everyone around them. I never understood the never say no to your children concept. Understanding and respecting the word no is the fundamental cornerstone of bodily autonomy, consent, one of the most important social concepts the child will have to learn. They need to understand both that they have the right to say no, a right they need to learn very early on, and that they have a responsibility to respect when others say no. Pulling out a 12-gauge shotgun when I don't listen. Attacking self-esteem in any way. Yelling at your kids. I don't mean, hey, get off the computer, or stop, you're gonna fall. I mean screaming things like, what is wrong with you? Or do you even try? When you get mad and get loud, you are doing 3 things. 1, teaching them that people are allowed to yell at them and say awful things to them and they should accept that treatment. 2, lowering their self-esteem. Whatever you are saying to them, they will believe. If you say you're so lazy, it will not motivate them to be less lazy. It will simply force the lazy trait upon them. 3, teaching them that they should always avoid serious conversations with you. You are not a safe person to talk to. 4, you're teaching your kid that they are allowed to yell at and berate other people. They will copy your behavior and suffer the consequences of people not liking them because of it. Worse yet, when kids see parents yell at each other and think it's normal behavior for the relationship. Downplaying their mental health struggles and taking years to realize that your child is suicidal and desperately needs help. Completely ignoring the doctors in the hospital begging to get yourself and the child evaluated because there's nothing wrong, my kid just did this because she's mad at me. I struggled with panic disorder, depression, and anxiety as a child. After the first few panic attacks, I got yelled at for waking my mom up to help me through it, and she told me consistently, "You're ruining my sleep, why do you keep doing this?" She never offered to help or understand and progressively got angry with me as they got worse, and was convinced I did it for attention. All that taught me was to hide it and not ask for help. Wasn't until college that I started going to therapy, and I finally helped myself to manage it. Now, I resent my mom as an adult for being so mean to me as a child during those times when I needed her most. Not giving the kids rights or privacy. Automatically dismissing and invalidating many of your child's opinions because you think since they're a child, they don't know anything. Yes, they're not always right, but they still are people and should be treated with respect. When one of your mom's boyfriends touches you when you're 14, and you tell her and she says, "Don't flirt with my boyfriend." Years later, you bring it up and she says, "I don't remember saying that." Having too many kids or more than you can afford and raising yourself. So you make the older child or children take care of the little ones so that they stop being children because they have to be like a second set of parents. It's not fair. Using the "I put food on your table" argument when the child points out your disrespectful behavior. Also, "I gave birth to you." Come back, "I wish you never did." Remember, the opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. If you see kids being neglected, ignored, or not cared about at all, that's a good indication that their parents aren't good. When it's Christmas and you're glad you don't have to see them. When the best gift they can give you is their absence. Helicopter parents. I've had several friends and other acquaintances whose parents were incredibly strict and controlling, and those friends were the most emotionally unstable, reckless, and chaotic people I've ever known. I don't want to give the impression that I think it's a cut and dry smother your children and they'll end up delinquents kind of situation. Still, I just found that whenever I encountered young adults who were recently freed from their parents who controlled their every move growing up, most often they turned to some wacky crap that they never would have gotten away with as a kid. On that note, my parents were beyond slack when raising me, and I could have gotten away with a lot of stuff if I'd had any desire to rebel, but I really didn't. Constantly deflecting parental responsibilities to other people, groups, or organizations. My stepsister, to her 8-year-old daughter, "It's not my job to help you with your homework. That's what teachers are for." I stayed down in grade 5 because of this. A big pile of incomplete homework snowballed, and then they called me too immature to move up a grade. Nah, if I was able to do my homework, then I'd be going through the next grade like everybody else. Hugging your kid while only ever looking at other people's reactions, and the kid doesn't quite look that comfortable with it. Hugging the kid in a manner that looks like a theater performance, basically, rather than actual affection. Only ever claiming their kid is the best and brightest, and only ever talking about their school/studies and nothing else. Dismissing the kid's POV by default without even listening to anything the kid has to say. So we've all had that fake affectionate parent in front of strangers turning into the vilest person minutes after they're gone. That's a relief. Recording your child while they're having a meltdown or tantrum and posting it on social media instead of helping them to regulate their emotions and understand what causes the emotion, how to deal with it, and that there are appropriate ways to communicate your feelings. My parents did this to me once. They took me out in the yard and hosed me down until I was cold, shivering, and crying. Then my dad got out the video camera and filmed me, telling me he was going to show everyone just how much of a bitch you are. The next day we had people over and my dad showed it to everyone by accident while playing home movies. This is the same group of families we still spend the holidays with, and I still struggle to be around them. Being a helicopter parent. Let your kids experience failure. Let them make mistakes, and let them get hurt mildly. That is how they learn. Let them make their own choices. You don't have to let them choose which of 20 shirts they want to wear, but give them 2 to 3 appropriate options and let them choose. Comparing your kids to other children. Screaming at your children. I am all for disciplining children and correcting bad behavior, but screaming is beyond unnecessary and can cause trauma even when they grow up. Take it from someone who had screaming parents. I still suffer from it. Thankfully, I have a much better relationship with them, but I'm still affected by it whenever I hear someone raise their voice. Needing to beat your children to discipline them. If they don't behave without a beating, I feel there is an underlying issue. Grossly decayed baby teeth. Using the saying, "I brought you into this world, I can take you out of it." I was just thinking about this last night and how I'm pretty sure this saying died with the boomers. I've never heard a Gen X or millennial parent say it. Crap names. Your child has to live with the name all their life. Not letting your kid talk to their doctor. I tried talking to my doctor twice about trouble falling asleep. At both appointments, my dad would cut me off and tell the doctor it's just because he plays video games. The doctor would shrug and nothing was done. Food shaming. That's a slide into an ED and lifelong trauma. Being too loose with your kid's nutrition is bad as well. Should teach healthy habits. Picking favorites. Or even worse, refusing to even acknowledge that because one child is similar in personality to you. You may have a bias toward them when family conflict comes up. My mother and sister may as well be the same person born twice, once in the 60s and again in the 90s. My sister used to fly into rages and scream at me and call me terrible things for hours on end. Every time I asked for help, my mother would always start with, "Well, what did you do?" and would always say her famous line, "You need to think about what you did to cause this. Even if it's 99% her fault, you still need to reflect on and own that 1% as though it's the 100% reason for the conflict. Do this and that. Why? Because I say so." If you don't explain to your kids the way of doing things, then you treat them like little servants and they grow up either submissive or rebellious, but never good. Constantly insisting that your child is back-talking when they're trying to explain you hurt them. I once met a father and his teenage children who were expected to and did address him by his professional title, Dr. So-and-so. Throwing out the things said parent has done for their child, such as sending them to school and feeding them. Yeah, if all you did as a parent was the absolute minimum legally required, you failed your child. They shouldn't be grateful for that. Having a kid just for the sake of having one. Don't want a kid? Don't have one. I don't care if your family guilt trips you. The parental instinct of wanting to like kids is not a magical switch. Locking your child in a closet with a cat when they have a severe allergy. An adult child who, without any extenuating circumstances, is not able to carry out the normal tasks of independent adult living. Smoking in the car with the kids inside. Teaching, "My parents will kill me if I don't fix this soon enough," instead of "I wonder if my parents could help me with this." Having kids for the sake of government aid. I knew a lady who fostered multiple kids for the checks. Being anti-vax. Smoking in front of children, not reading to them, showing them no affection or attention. Making your kid think being rude or crass is cute and funny. Posting your kids on social media 24/7. Forcing your kids to do sports. I'd argue wrestlers were the worst, as many parents would deride their kids for daring to eat while forcing them into practice sessions that'd result in excessive vomiting, lacerations, and cauliflower ear, even when the coaches voiced concerns the students were putting in too much. In any case, it was often clear the parents were just trying to relive their glorious high school years vicariously through their own children. The same thing happens with football and other sports, but I'd argue they're not quite as physically abusive. Forcing kids to play a specific sport is the issue. Kids playing sports in general is a good thing. It builds teamwork, exercise habits, sense of pride, it helps them deal with failure, and it also just gets them out of their bubble/typical circle. But forcing a very specific sport on your child, one that they do not enjoy at all, is an issue. You have to find the path of least resistance. Raise your kids and you can spoil your grandkids. Spoil your kids and you'll raise your grandkids. Parents who press their personal beliefs and practices upon their children. Maybe your daughter doesn't want to wear dresses all the time. So what? Maybe your son doesn't want to be the doctor that you weren't able to be. Okay, so? For example, my parents are very religious, and everything is about religion and honoring God. Yet the ironic thing is that my parents are extremely abusive physically, verbally, mentally, and emotionally. Don't force beliefs upon your children. Widen their perspective. Show them what's out there, and let them make their own decisions. Don't yell at them or hurt them if they're not doing it your way. Telling your kid, "I wish you were never born," when they're suicidal and saying they wish they were dead. Letting your child become obese, setting them up for a future with physical and mental health problems, as well as less impulse control. They lose 3 years of life expectancy by being moderately obese, and 10 years with severe obesity. Same as lifelong smoking. Your kid is on an iPad at the restaurant. People freaking out at their children for making a small mistake. Extra points if it was a totally genuine mistake like an accident breaking a glass. Refusing to give your kids therapy because their life is easy. Giving crying kids mobile phones to make them silent. Do you have kids? Because I've done this out of courtesy to others. On an airplane, you bet I'll do anything to keep my toddler quiet because I'm judged either way. Crying kid bad, a kid with phone bad. Using your kids as props for your social media. Having children in the first place when neither you nor your partner are mentally stable. As a teacher, parents who are either not involved with their children's education at all, or the ones who consistently make excuses or laugh it off when their child is misbehaving in school. I emailed home about a student recently who consistently would destroy art supplies. The response from the parents was, "Haha, she's so silly, I'll talk with her." Previous interactions went the same. Wouldn't let her stay after detention because she can't miss soccer practice and said, "Boy, she sure has a lot of energy." Never giving the child an actual consequence or holding her accountable for her actions, completely setting this child up for failure once they get out into the real world. Picking your kids up from school only to ignore them the second that you get home. You go straight to your computer to play Fortnite while your dog literally takes a crap near the front door, and you yell at your kids to pick them up, all while your date is just royally confused. Not teaching your kids basic skills such as cooking and cleaning. Boys and girls alike. Giving the child a name that is likely to get them bullied. Children go to school with no lunch. Determining your child's worth through success, grades, awards, career, and how much money the child makes in their job as an adult, and pitting them against their siblings and comparing them to other children. If your kid is autistic, I gotta say, filming their meltdown. As the mom of an autistic person, this just boils my blood. If they're having a problem, how about actually helping them? Whether that means getting them out of that situation that's causing sensory overload, keeping them safe if they have a tendency to do stims that could be dangerous, like headbanging, or just talking to them and letting them know that you're there for them. Not acknowledging that even if they're nonverbal or developmentally delayed, that doesn't mean they don't have feelings. Parentification of kids. I've known kids that had to be a third parent to their siblings because their actual parents weren't there for them. We just let him cry, complain, whine, moan, and he stops eventually. If a child is hurt, afraid, sad, or tired, they need love and support. If a child is throwing a tantrum because you wouldn't buy them the toy that they don't need, tell them in a way that they will understand that the way that they are acting isn't appropriate and won't get them the results they want, and then ignore them. A tantrum is usually to get attention, so if you ignore the cynical attempt to get attention, then they stop, which assumes you give them appropriate amounts of attention otherwise. Projecting your insecurities onto your kids. Laughing when your child is misbehaving. Not being financially stable when you decide to have kids and expecting hardworking taxpayers to pay for your life and theirs. Not letting your male child play with dolls, or inversely, not letting your female child play with cars or action figures. Living vicariously through them. When a parent constantly talks down on their spouse. As a child, it's hard to grow up hearing insults hurled at one of your parents constantly, i.e., your father does, your father never does. Just get a divorce if you have nothing positive to say about your spouse. Your child doesn't need to hear that. Filming your kids as you play traumatizing pranks on them. Getting angry at teachers and retail workers because they wanted to talk to you. When it's winter and cold as hell and mom is all bundled up holding a baby with no coat on or shoes, mom has her nails and hair done but can't afford to get the baby shoes or a coat or snowsuit. Also, dirty kids. It takes a minute to wipe your kid's face before taking them to the store. Also, forgetting your baby or kids in your car. If your kids have high anxiety. Giving your kid a phone or access to social media before 14 or 15. Parents who have a child they didn't want and then proceed to let that child know that, through words and actions every day of their life. I'm their parent, so I know best. This is specifically about parents who use this line to deny evidence-based practices in parenting. Treating them as some sort of investment. Here where I live, it is common for some families to expect a part of their child's paycheck when they start working and earning as a way to pay back all of the things that were done for them during childhood. In some cases, the parents actually force their child into doing so. Humiliating your children in public. Reporting a kid missing after 30 days. Resorting to physical means of disciplining your kids. If you can't raise your kids through verbal communication, you have lost and failed. Allowing your kids to run around in a restaurant. Thanks for watching until the end. Do you have an example you'd like to give? Please share it in the comments below. Then be sure to like this video, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so that you know when our next video is available. For more videos like this one right now, please stop by our channel. Thanks again, and see you next time.